Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Uncatechized Catholic Podcast, the live show where you stop being such an uncatechized Catholic. Here we don't just grow in knowledge of the faith, but we learn to let the faith infiltrate and transform our lives so that we might die as saints. Remember, you can watch or listen to previous episodes on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. I'm Desirae Sifuentes. I had to restart this because of some technical difficulties that I hopefully have figured out. Yeah, Brian has figured it out. Brian told me I was in the wrong orientation, and then when I ended my lives to go back into my settings, it showed that I had dual orientation, and he was on the wrong one. So everybody collectively boo Brian in the chat, but Brian, you can say hello now. I cannot hear you. Brian's also been having technical difficulties with his mic. He is either, you cannot hear him at all, or he's like frustratingly loud. So anyway, let's begin with a prayer in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, let this be something today that people need to hear, and that I say the things that people are receptive to, and that I maintain a spirit of charity, even though I'm very passionate about this subject. And for all the intentions of those listening now and in the future, we'll say, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Today, we're talking about bad Catholic content creators, recognizing the bad and the good, and doing it well. So before we hop into that, of course, we'll do our check-in this week, past week. How's your prayer life been? Has it been daily? Has it been consistent? Have you been reading your scriptures? Have you done active edification every day outside of listening to this show, which I know is your favorite? Have you been reading encyclicals? Pope Leo's is going to come out in like 9-ish days. Parents, have you taught your children something today? Have you gone to confession or adoration in the last week? Or will you go before the end of this week? You should. Before you go to bed tonight, reflect on how you have cooperated or not with God to be transformed into his image, letting your faith mold you. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, you may be familiar with Gloria Patri coffee, but maybe not with this cup. Today, we do this, all the different sounds. I don't know. I spend too much time joking about ASMR with the coffee, but this week's cup is a Nebraska cup. It says, oh, my camera won't focus on it. That's okay. Front and center right here, if my camera would focus on it, it says Boys Town, and that is Father Flanagan. And then there's a little boy hanging off of his shoulder. Oh, I forgot to take my sip. You can get 10% off of your first order, or maybe your second order. I maintain that they haven't said that you can use it. You can only use it once. I think you can use it as many times as you want. Code Uncatechized, Uncatechized, at gloriapatri.com. I'm thankful to them for helping make this show possible. But going back to Father Flanagan, I am going to Boys Town again, and so is Brian. It'll be my second time going, but Brian's first time going. I'm trying to get my phone to show me the date because I can't remember. It's also behind me. Oh, on my Father Flanagan Boys Town calendar. It's May 6th. So we're leaving in a week, Brian? I don't know. Math is hard. But yeah, I think we leave in 8 days. Yeah, 8 days to go. And we're going to be there for the Boys Town graduation, and I'll be sharing a bunch of stuff about it because Father Flanagan has been moved from just a father to venerable Father Flanagan. So it's going to be extra awesome. I see some chats coming in. Haley says, hi, everyone. Everyone say hello to Haley. And Grassroots Catholic, did I make the list? You know what's funny is everyone does keep asking me, like, well, actually one person demanded that I give them a list, and I said no to that, but keeps demanding good stuff. And I won't, I think just prudentially, I won't say, oh, so-and-so is so great, because you never know, apparently. But I'll show you how to suss it out for yourself. Haley says I'm a bad content creator, not because my content is bad, but because I'm bad at the creator part. And Brian says, get ready, Boys Town, coming in hot. It's so true. I'm so excited to go back. It was a God thing for sure. I was talking to Mark about Boys Town on a different, I think we were coming back from Keith Nestor's house. And I was like, oh, I want to go to Boys Town again. And I want to take the kids next time. And And like a couple of days later, Boys Town reached out and was like, hey, you want to come out again? I was like, I sure do. I sure do. Anyway, so where are we at now? I scrolled down too far in my little list of keeping my thoughts straight. Oh, book of the week. So I've not been reading books because I've been reading encyclicals. Oh my gosh, you guys, I have a hair in my lip balm and it's making me crazy. This fat stack of paper as the print encyclicals that I've been reading. I was reading Pacem in Terris, Apostolicum Actuositatem, and then I'm in the middle of Gaudium et Spes. I need to, when I'm done, I will go start with chapter 3. But because it was a 49-51 split on whether I talk about gender roles or this, I will throw those people a bone and say, in Pacem in Terris, I found this, which obviously that means peace on earth, and so I really wasn't expecting to see this in here, but I'm going to read you, as I do, a little bit. This is, if you want to go find it for yourself, it is paragraphs 31 and 34 that I'm reading, or sections 31 and 34, I really don't know what they call them. It's under mutual collaboration and an attitude of responsibility. The portions that are highlighted say, since men are social by nature, they must live together and consult each other's interests. That men should recognize and perform their respective rights and duties is imperative to a well-ordered society. Wait, no! Oh, no! Where's the part that I had? This is the wrong quote. You guys, don't laugh at me. It hurts me. It was the next page, guys. Next page. And it looks really similar. See how it's like the two and they're not that far apart? Anyway, it's paragraphs 41 and 43 under characteristics of the present day. Okay, here we go. It says, women are gaining an increasing awareness of their natural dignity. Far from being content with a purely passive role or allowing themselves to be regarded as a kind of instrument, they are demanding both in domestic and in public life the rights and duties which belong to them as human persons. The long-standing inferiority complex of certain classes because of their economic and social status, sex, or position in the state, and the corresponding superiority complex of other classes is rapidly becoming a thing of the past. So, I'm reading all of these because I am looking for stuff like this. And the great thing about encyclicals is many of them is you'll start, like this one right here. I think it was this one, right? Oh, gosh, I was wrong the first time. No, okay, I'm right this time. It's Mulieris Dignitatem. This is the one I went to when I was looking for gender role stuff. And it begins, and it's in so many words, says, as we've said before, in Gaudium et Spes, and in Apostolicum Actuositatem, and in Pacem in Terris, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, okay, I'm going to print all of these, even though I'm not really sure where it's going to say in the Apostolicum Actuositatem or in Pacem in Terris. But, you know, I believe you. And I was so shocked to see, like, how straightforward and deliberate that was in there. So anyway, I'm working on it, and I'm working on proving that the church actually does teach this stuff, and it is what she currently promulgates, because people like to argue with me about that, and those people are wrong. Anyway, please consider supporting Uncatechized Catholic on Locals, uncatechizedcatholic.locals.com/support, because my studio is falling apart. If you're watching on YouTube, you can look right here. You see this, like, black triangle? It's because that is a, I don't even know what we call it, soundboard. It makes it sound better in here. An acoustic panel. There we go. And it fell off the wall. And it took out one of my lights. So now my light is all sad and crooked. And it also took out one of my cameras. It was, let's see. Can we get it? This camera got taken out. Fortunately, it's obviously fine. But I would not appreciate losing my camera, because that, yeah, it's a big fat problem. And so I need support so that my studio can be held together with more than Velcro, duct tape, and dreams. And speaking of cameras, I apparently also need to update my cameras if I ever want to make shorts of the show. I think we've determined that even though these cameras are great, they're not good enough for that. So I need, like, mucho dinero, $3,000, $2,500 cameras. Anyway, today we are talking about bad Catholic content creators, how to recognize the bad and the good, and how to do it well. Haley chimed in and said, I didn't even know Boys Town was still a thing. To be honest, I thought it went away because of the stuff. I'm glad I was wrong on that. Yeah, I'm glad you're wrong too, because Boys Town is sick. And it's also super impressive. When I first went, I was being told about it before I got there, and I was like, oh, okay, so this will be cute. I imagined like a small campus. It's not small at all. They have a mayor. And actually, the mayor, when I went a couple years ago, I think he was 18. It was really cool. Anyway, yeah, bad content creators, how to recognize it, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I think the best way to just get into this, I'm kind of going to be riffing today, but also kind of not, because I've written about this so much. But that is to say that I didn't really script this. I know where I'm going. So the best starting point for this is, I think, to discuss the whole point of posting content like this online, which is evangelization, okay? Encyclicals have been super clear. I believe I've talked about this somewhat in previous episodes. We are all called to evangelize. It is the primary mission of the church. Every single one of us is called to do this, and there's not a single one of us that has the exception. It doesn't matter if you are one of those people who thinks like, oh, I just have to act like a Catholic and I don't ever have to actually say anything. Wrong. The church says you have to act, walk, talk, sit, stand, eat, dress like a Catholic. Like literally, it is all of the things, and we all have to do them. That said, there's some nuance to the teaching as always, which is that if you're not ready for certain things, don't do it before you're ready. But you need to be working on yourself so that you are ready to do it. So all of us, on top of that, are called to evangelize in different ways. So some people have had the call to evangelize specifically online. Some people are called to evangelize with children. Some people, you get it, okay? You're very smart people. I don't need to overly explain this to you. But we all have to discern what let's call it our niche. Those are like the internet terms, right? Like, what is our niche? What's our niche for evangelization? Where are we called most to do it? Is it in our workplace? Is it by raising a really good family, volunteering for our church, whatever, right? And that's for each person to discern and to figure out with the Lord. However, there are some rules for evangelizing on the internet specifically. And again, we're all called to evangelize, and that includes on the internet. And you may evangelize on the internet via like doing something like what I do, or you may evangelize on the internet by commenting, okay? Being part of the digital Areopagus here. And you have to be measured, and you have to be respectable, and you have to be kind and not snappy, or all of the things that people love to be in the comment section, and I know you know what I'm talking about. So let's talk about how to do it well and how you see it not done well with these content creators, right? The bad ones. So somebody who does it well is somebody who remembers that the Lord is their God and they have no false gods before him. All right? Yes, that's the first commandment. But that's absolutely true. And that also kind of ties in with your vocational order, right? Like, this will not be something that a viewer can see necessarily, but somebody who remembers that the order is God, spouse, children, and everything else, or if they're not like married or with children yet, it's just God first. And the responsibilities flow after that. But I do kind of think you can tell when somebody doesn't have a personal, close relationship with Jesus. Like, the struggle, not the suffering. I don't mean the suffering, but like the struggle with the fruits of the Spirit. It's far easier to overflow with fruits of the Spirit when you are close to the Lord, and it's a lot harder to overflow with them when you've neglected that relationship with the Lord, right? And so maybe the answer to that is, what are the fruits here? Are they, what is it? There's a song. It's the fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gratefulness, gentleness, and self-control. Do they ooze that, or do they ooze the opposite of all of those things? And for you, dear listener, if you are in the comments, are you oozing all of those things, or are you sniping? You're not alone if you're sniping. The number of times I have started to comment to somebody and then just highlight and deleted that sucker because it's like I should not say this. It's an everyday battle. Another thing to look for is staying in your lane. I've seen a lot of people who really struggle. Again, it goes kind of back to niche, right? Like, not just niche in terms of should I be making content myself, or do I just, comment? Do I whatever? People, they're supposed to have a focus, right? Like, that is growth 101, is knowing who you're talking to and what your content is about and only focusing on that and not going outside of it. And some people will just sort of go all over the place. Like, they'll be Catholic content creators, but then they'll be talking about things that are not Catholic. They'll go into politics, or they'll go into, I don't know, like, what other churches do with other churches. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to not think of anything overly specific because I really don't want to call out anyone in particular, but you see it really commonly. And it's like, why are you talking about this? Why are you posting about this? Like, this is not your forte. This is not your expertise. This is not what I'm here for. I don't understand. And that probably comes down a little bit to impulse control, but also just like your quality and your state. And it's the same for, commenting. If you don't know enough to be responding back to somebody, this is something that I've spoken about a lot, and I wrote about it actually on my Substack, where I was saying that clericalism is making you dumb. This is just one example of that. People who don't know enough about a subject, and then they'll get in there and they'll be like, well, actually, you're wrong because Father such and such says blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, that's Father such and such's opinion. It's not your research, your conclusion, your whatever. And so if you want to present that into the conversation, you can say, interesting take. I had heard from Father such and such, blah, 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 blah. What do you make of this? Have you heard this? Whatever. And then that opens up the dialogue in a much more humble way, and a much more respectable way, and a much less aggressive way, right? But unfortunately, whether you're a creator or a commenter, if you're not staying in your lane, if you're like chronically in mortal sin, if you're not in the habit of regularly continuing your formation, if you're just incapable of acknowledging where your limits are, right? And this goes back to the whole post of where I said, if you're in your 20s, right? Like, it's not disparaging youth, which, stick a pin in that. It's more of you can only possibly know so much at 20. You can only possibly have so much wisdom, because wisdom isn't given, it's earned, And if you're incapable of acknowledging what the limits to your knowledge and your wisdom is, you're not going to be presenting the face of the Lord. You're going to be obscuring the face of the Lord. And so you have to say, I'm ready to comment on this. I'm ready to post about this. I'm not ready to comment about this. I'm not ready to post on this. And maybe it's not even just knowledge. It's also disposition, right? Like, if I'm grumpy, if I'm going to snipe at somebody, I can't be doing that. But one thing, because it's here now, so I've seen people in the comments and people messaging me who brought up that in Timothy it says that when Paul's writing to Timothy and he's talking about talking to the elders, he says, do not let them disparage your youth. And I'm going to do a comical, start listing these bad content creators by name, or I'm leaving. The people want war. You know what? Die to self. That's what I say. Timothy, if you don't know, was in his 30s. Okay? So this idea of, like, the literal meaning of that was Paul was saying these elders are going to try and dismiss you because of your youth, but you need to remain charitable, pure, and faithful, sinless, faithful, loving, kind, and push back on them. Don't let them dismiss you because of your youth. Say, hey, ignore my age, contend with what I'm saying, right? Like, that's the literal interpretation there. And even if you want to go the spiritual route and say, okay, so literally Timothy's in his 30s, but still people who are in their 20s and in their teens and who are children, they have a role too. That's written about really well in encyclicals, that everybody, I think Apostolic Immacuo Citatum was discussing this. Maybe some other ones, I don't know. There's like a lot of encyclicals on the ladies' role and duties to evangelize. But anyway, everybody has a role to play, and your age isn't something that excludes you. However, prudentially, your age should tell you something. Children shouldn't be, like, we're not Jesus going to the temple, all right? They shouldn't be schooling adults. Children should be doing it in a way that is good for children, probably to children, older siblings to younger siblings, that sort of thing. And then high school teens, etc. Similarly, maybe they're starting to get out into the work field, and so they kind of do start to talk to people who are maybe older than them a little bit, but still with humility, acknowledging like my knowledge is not going to be the same as somebody who teaches this at the university level, obviously. Those who are college aged in their 20s, probably great to go work in high school ministry, you know? But this idea that I just converted or I have just reverted and I have all of this zeal and all of this energy and whatever, and so I want to grab a mic and start telling the world to submit to Rome. That's just not how it works, and it's not effective at all. And when I'm saying it's not how it works, I'm not saying like, oh, you can't do that. Obviously, you literally can do that. It's like literally within the possibility of doing things, but it's not what the church prescribes in any of the documents that talk about evangelization. She never ever says to do stuff like that. She routinely says get involved in your community, be involved at your parish, stuff like that. And so that level of I'm not schooled enough, I guess, to be schooling others at the level that, you know, I would kind of like to, but I can channel that into service, and I will gain a lot of wisdom from my service, and then that also kind of buys me time to get ready to engage people at a higher level, and so on and so forth. So staying in your lane is a huge, huge part of this. And if somebody quotes that Timothy thing at you, the first thing to ask them is how old do they think Timothy was? Next is honoring the Lord in what you do. Whether you're posting like this or you're commenting, you should always think, perhaps, would I say this to Jesus? Would I say this in front of Jesus? I actually had a friend tell me a story, and I'll kind of anonymize it a little bit, but she was at an event, and somebody higher up in the church came to the event because it was like a Catholic event, and people at the event were drinking. And when this higher up from the church was present, they were all like, you know, pinkies up, tee-hee-hee, drinking their drinks. And then as soon as that higher up from the church left, they were like, yeah, let's take shots. And my friend was like, where were the shots when higher up in the church was here? You didn't want to do shots in front of him, but now when he's gone, you do, right? Like, probably because there's some element of you that knows that, like, party hardy, let's take shots isn't super appropriate. And I'm not going to open that whole can of worms. We'll leave it there. I will say I'm not a teetotaler, but, you know, moderation. Hint, hint, wink, wink. But yeah, similarly, you need to honor the Lord in what you do on the internet, which is why I keep coming back to like the sniping and griping and whatever. Would you do this to Jesus? Would you do it in front of Jesus? If you wouldn't do it to him or in front of him, probably shouldn't be doing it in front of people who may not know him. And that's yet another thing about the internet, is you can't control who your stuff goes to. So the best you can hope is, like, with a prayer and the algorithm, the people who see your stuff are the people who should see your stuff, but you have really no control over it. Like, I get people all the time who argue with me about stuff, and they'll tell me I'm wrong, and then I'll ask them to elaborate on how I'm wrong, and then they start talking about something that I'm not talking about. And all I can say is, that's not what I'm talking about, and you may not, like, be ready for this conversation yet. You know, and in humility, you have to say, all right, I'll bow out, or this isn't for me, or Jesus, I'm going to let you handle this, because if I handle it, I'm going to jail. So, honoring the Lord in how you present yourself online, and being present. That's the next one. Like I said, this is stuff that I've written before. So, being present to people, this is an interesting one to extrapolate. This is part of my my thesis, but by being present to people, from the how to tell a bad content creator from a better one, do they consistently show up, or are they like really hit or miss? And I'll like admit, I myself have not consistently shown up. There was a good period of time when I was getting my degree and having a baby and moving and all that jazz where I didn't. We can say that there is some forgiveness to that. You know, not that you need to be perfect all the time, or that you shouldn't be understanding of lives changing and things shifting and whatever. But I do mean, if you say you're going to do a live show every Wednesday at 7 Eastern, and then you're canceling it at least once a month, like the people who want to show up and want to whatever, engage, that's not very loving toward them. And you know, that is something that's extrapolated from real life. If you were to be walking with somebody in their formation process and you're like, oh yeah, let's go get coffee and, you know, talk about Jesus, and then you were just constantly canceling coffee on them, that was going to make them feel like you're flaky, maybe the church is flaky, maybe Jesus is flaky, because this isn't how Jesus loves us, right? Like Jesus shows up for us, and so sacrificing and moving things around and whatever is the best way to do it. So making sure that for the creator standpoint, you're present. And presence also, by definition, is incarnational. And that's an important point. All online Catholic content creation will ultimately fall short of the goal, because no evangelization can be outdone. How should I say this? Nothing online will ever outdo what can be done in person. So every single person who you watch should be driving you to an incarnational experience. They should be saying, go to your parish and volunteer. They should be going to their parish and volunteering themselves. They should be saying, get with your community, pick up, you know, your Bible, go to adoration. How can we facilitate this in person? I have a friend who's trying to work on something to get people to mass. You know, some people are interested in going to mass, but they're a little like, I want to go by myself because I don't know what to do, and what if people look at me, and da 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 da. And of course, like, we know nobody's looking at them, but we also understand how nerve-wracking it is to go somewhere where you're not familiar and you have to do things and you don't know what to do. So what do I do, right? They are trying to come up with something that will help if I'm in St. Louis and I'd like to go to a mass. An alert goes out to everybody in St. Louis, and whoever wants to go to mass with them, they can partner up and go to mass, right? And that's something that can be done even from the commenter standpoint. If you're encountering somebody and you happen to discern that they're local or whatever, you can invite them to church. You can encourage them to go to a parish, to talk to a priest, to whatever. Warm connections is a big part of that too. Like, it's a lot easier to say in real life or on the internet, you know, I don't know the answer to that, but Father would. And it's a lot better to say, why don't we go ask Father real quick? I'll get you connected. I will let him know that you're going to call or text, whatever, right? The other thing, and this is a big one, is you shall watch your mouth. And this is one that I'm very frustrated by. And so I need to watch my mouth while I talk about this one. There's the obvious, you need to watch your mouth, in the sense of don't use swear words, don't gossip, don't rage bait, don't do all of that stuff. But there's also the watch your mouth in the sense of kind of maybe a little bit going back to what we were saying earlier, of like acknowledging your limits and knowing what you're qualified to talk about and what you're not qualified to talk about. I think with some of these bad content creators, they are thinking that they're smart enough to fool people who are not as smart as they are, but they're not smart enough to fool people who are smarter than they are, if that makes sense. And so I think they're really relying on the uncatechized to fall for stuff and to think like, oh, you're definitely so smart and you definitely know what you're talking about. But people who are not uncatechized watch this stuff and they go, no. You don't know enough about this, or I'm pretty sure you just Googled this before you came on here. Like, I'm pretty sure you saw somebody said something and you went, I don't like that, and I want to beat everybody to the punch. I want to stitch and respond to this, and I want to get mine up first. And so they went and they Googled something, and they probably skimmed some articles or something, and then they threw together this post. And it's like, that's not what the church teaches. But because you weren't watching your mouth, you threw something bad out there, and that's not good. Further still, there is... Again, I want to make sure that I don't point out anybody in particular, but there was a creator, and he's not the only one, but there was one recently who made a post about something, and they quoted an encyclical, and they said, this encyclical says this. And I was like, no, it doesn't. And I went to that encyclical, and I found what they were talking about, and it was, they literally posted a fragment of a sentence. but they posted it like it was a sentence. They didn't even use an ellipsis at the end to say the sentence goes on. And so when they fragmented the sentence, they made it sound like it said one thing, but when you read the entire sentence, it said literally the opposite of what they were insisting. And in that case, they are lying. Like, they are deliberately lying. I know your eyes did not stop in the middle of that sentence. I know you saw what it said, but you want to say something else. You want to take the church in a different direction and influence people to think one way. That is not how the church teaches. And so that's not even just, I don't know enough and I'm not watching my mouth. It's I'm lying. I'm lying to people because I want what I want. And I want it to sound like the church teaches this, so why don't you all just come around to that already? Church doesn't teach all of this stuff. And so when, like, I said this, I think, in the last show, if I get, every time I give further resources, please go look at my further resources. Please do. I'm not giving them to you for fun. Like, I don't know. I'm not giving them to you because I want you to think I'm a nerd and I'm, like, citing my sources or something. I'm giving them to you because I want you to go deeper, and what I give you is supposed to be, like, a bite-sized, thoughtful thing in the short things that I post on the various social media accounts. And the further resources go deeper. And I know some of them are long, okay? Like, oh wait, no, this is two of them. Gaudium et spes, whatever. I'm not a Latin scholar, obviously. Some of these are long, and I try sometimes to give you, like, specific paragraphs to go and check out, because I'm, I don't want you to just, like, read this whole thing and go, where is the relevant part? But also, we have the internet, and so you can, like, Control F if you want to look for the relevant part. Just tip of the day. But go and check it out. And if other people give you resources, definitely go and check out the resources. And you can see if it's from some, like, weirdo blog that some guy who probably lives in his mom's basement posted, or if it's actually from the church and actually credible, and so on and so on. And if you're not sure, honestly, message me. Email me. That's a better one. Email me. My social media inboxes are a freaking wreck, and I try. I've been trying to get back into them and keep up with them, but it's terrible. But you know what? No one emails me. So if you email me, I will see it. And if somebody posted something and there's a funky source and you're like, I don't know if this is legit, you can email me and I will look at that source and I will tell you if it's good or bad. So watch your mouth. Don't gossip. Don't swear. Don't tell lies. Don't hastily research and then post something, because you're probably going to be missing some context. And be aware of this as a viewer. Does this sound like somebody really knows what they're talking about, or does it sound like they Googled it beforehand? Does this sound like something I know to be consistent with church teaching, or I've at least heard to be consistent with church teaching? Or is this, like, wildly contrary to anything I've ever heard from church teaching? Does this sound legit, or does it sound like cope? That kind of stuff. And of course, as commenters, you know what it means to watch your mouth. Also, keep your word trustworthy. This a little bit goes hand in, all of these things probably go hand in hand with each other in some sense, but keep your word trustworthy. When you rush to post and you do things like that and you post things that are wrong, you wind up having to post, like, retractions and corrections all the time, or you just refuse to do it and then everybody knows it, and then they go, this person posts wrong stuff frequently, and then they refuse to retract it, or they give these, like, really crappy retractions. I've seen some really crappy retractions and apologies that were not, they were just blaming other people and refusing to take accountability and responsibility. If it sounds like a crappy apology, that's a red flag. If they're regularly issuing retractions and corrections and things like that, that's a red flag, because again, you're being hasty. You're trying to be first instead of trying to be right. And this isn't like the mainstream media slop. This is the teachings of the Catholic Church. So if you're going to present yourself as somebody who's teaching what the church teaches, you need to take the time to ensure that you teach what the church teaches. And I will say this is nuance, right? Some understanding, let's say. Some topics are really big. And so when you try to bring them down, sometimes, I posted about this today, talking about, like, watering down the faith versus simplifying it. Sometimes you just have to simplify a teaching to make it fit into the space that you're working with. And so you can't fit in every addendum, every but also or exception to the rule or what have you. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about people who are like, hey, dude, this is like the rule. This is it. And yes, there's like flex and the joints move and whatever, but more or less, this is the rule. Not talking about that. I'm talking about actually teaching the wrong thing and actually saying the wrong thing and spitting out something that people can't then rely on. And it's a big deal as a Catholic teacher because it's expected as a Christian, as a Catholic Christian, that you would hear from the world, even like really wonderful teachers. Sometimes things that will be not 100% accurate, and so you should have an awareness of that. But from within the church, there is a higher expectation. If you're going to be a teacher within the church, I expect you to be correct pretty much all the time. You're human, you're going to make mistakes, but pretty much all the time. You need to be correct, you need to have things right, you need to have it locked down tight. And if you don't, I can't trust you. And if I'm somebody weaker in the faith or newer to the faith, that might actually affect how I walk with the church. And that's the part that I think many people who do this, who shouldn't be doing this, maybe forget about, is they think their faith is so strong and they're so sure and there are all these things that they forget that the majority of Catholics aren't the same way. The very, very, very faithful Catholics who do care a lot, who do put in work and put in effort and put in whatever, they are, I don't know, like probably top third or something of all Catholics in the world. Most Catholics that you're going to interact with are just, they're not there. They're people who still think that maybe the church will come around to something someday, or who are completely unaware that NFP means blah, 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 right? So because they're still so malleable, because I don't want to say they're fragile, but in charity, assume the best use of that word, because they are so fragile. You can make a mistake and break them, and it can really damage their walk in the faith, and they're responsible for their walk in the faith and keeping the faith and what have you. But also, if they're thrown off of their walk in the faith because of your negative influence, that's on you as well. Also, going back to like the rushing thing, people who are consistently posting about topical things where you kind of tread into the gossip space, whether they're first or not. I mean, first is its own red flag, but just consistently posting about topical stuff tells you that what they're looking for is what is algorithmically relevant. And as a creator, there's a wisdom to that. But if all you post is what is relevant to the algorithm, odds are you're not taking a lot of time and discerning with your prayer life, with what you're reading in the scriptures, with whatever, what God is putting in front of you and asking you to put in front of the world. I mean, I can see it in my own content. I'll get things that get like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of views, and then I'll get other posts that never even crack 1,000. And maybe part of that is because I have been posting regularly for 3 or 4 weeks or something like that now. But also I think part of it is just who is talking about watering down the faith or simplifying it? Who is talking about how poorly educated Christians are directly responsible for atheism? Like, no one. So I'm posting about that because God is putting that in front of me, and so I want to share that with people. Like, literally, this that's where both of those posts came from, was this stack of encyclicals. But it's just not, whatever, it's not like algorithmically relevant or whatever. I have a post tomorrow that I do know is probably gonna do better than the posts from today and yesterday, because I do see some sense of like algorithmic relevancy there. But there's a wisdom to heating the algorithm. But if every single thing is, you know, what's the drama this week, who is everybody talking about this week, what is whatever, right? And also, ooh, that's a good one. Also, if all they do is regurgitate other stuff, red flag. Algorithm. Okay, that's what it is. If someone seems to mind the algorithm more than they're focused on sharing what God puts on their hearts, red flag. And if all they do is regurgitate other people's stuff, red freaking flag. I see this plenty of times too. And I see it probably, it's in the Catholic sphere, but to keep it anonymized for the Catholic sphere, I see it in the political sphere all the time. There are accounts out there that are actual like boots on the ground journalists who are covering stories, and so they'll get footage, they'll get tips, they'll get information, and they post it themselves. And then there's like dozens or hundreds of bottom feeder accounts who rip the footage and rip the story and then get themselves in front of a camera, and then they like, you know, watch the video or they show you the video and they're like, okay, so you just saw this happen, this is what happened, and also here's the information that was totally not in the caption of that video, stay safe guys. And like that's what they post. That's nothing. Like that is almost identical to just like downloading somebody else's content and throwing it up and reposting it, which some people do. And yeah, it's, if there's no independent creation there, I won't say red flag, I'll say yellow flag, because some people really just want to create like a curated feed with other people's stuff, and they say like, this was a really good video and like I'll reshare it. And some creators get like really upset about that because they don't get credit, and then like that it takes their views and whatever. I don't really care. There's a funny real meme thing of mine out there that I took from the Mario movie, which I haven't even seen. My kids are just watching it, and I saw this particular scene and I was like, ah, Catholic, how Catholic. And it was a star that was talking about like embracing death or something. And so I made it real, and I was like, oh, Catholics say this. But I didn't put a watermark on it, and so people just downloaded it. And Brian said, what? Yeah, you probably saw it, and you know what I'm talking about. I never watermarked it, so people have just downloaded it and shared it. And so every time I see it, I'll comment, and I'm like, hey, I made this. If you like this humor or whatever, follow me. And Brian said, you haven't, and you're quoting it, you faker. Like I said, Mark saw it. He was my husband. He was watching it with the kids, and I didn't. I don't know. I don't watch a lot of stuff, and when I do watch stuff, it's usually me just like rewatching Desperate Housewives or House or whatever. I am not a fan of most new media, if you will, popular media. Anyway, so hand in hand with constantly reposting other people's stuff, being constantly innovative and creative. Okay, so this is like a twofold thing. One, there's nothing new under the sun, and so we need to represent the same old truths in a new way for today, right? And that's something for creators to do and something for commenters to do. You know, find new and interesting ways to communicate the same thing. Maybe it is a funny little joke about death and like being ready for it and whatever. Or maybe it is something like St. Louis de Montfort. What is that book? He wrote a book, and then somebody, I think his name's Gabriel, wrote a book that was basically representing that information on the rosary, but packaged in a much more modern looking book and written in much more modern language, and so on and so on and so on. That's not necessarily brand new. It's a little bit brand new because he like rewrote it and, you know, gave his own insights and stuff like that. But it is a same old truth represented in a new way. And so just being on the internet and posting stuff like this is a bit innovative and creative, if you will. So if you see creators doing that, taking a chance, doing, gosh, what is the one? Oh, I'm blanking on his name. Markham. That's it. He saw Blippi and was like, oh, I can do that, but Catholic. And so he does like Catholic kid stuff kind of in that style, but like slightly less obnoxious than Blippi. That's creative. That's innovative. And then that fills a hole, you know. I would way rather my kids watch Markham than Blippi. So there you go. Yeah, that's just a wisdom for in-person evangelization, but it's also true for the internet, like finding the way to reach people by doing something new as opposed to regurgitating whatever, and it's like not new and it's not effective and it doesn't reach people, right? And then remembering also for creators and commenters, all of this is intended to be an entry point. I said earlier that all of this pales in comparison to the incarnational experience. So all of this should be pointing people toward the Eucharist. All of this should be driving people to go to Mass, to find their community, to find their people, to whatever. And so keeping that in mind and going, it's like, I don't know, it's like being the greeter at the grocery store, right? Are you going to want to go shop at the store if the greeter's like, hi? Or is it going to be better if the first person you see is smiling at you and it says like, hello, welcome to my store. Welcome to the store. It's probably not mine. I just work here, you know? But if they're friendly and they're polite and they're whatever, if you're on the internet and you're gossiping, you know, what is the phrase that people love to say? They love to go, ain't no hate like Christian love or something. I mean, if the boot fits, if you're being a hateful son of a gun, you know, you can't really blame people for thinking that you're a hateful monster if you act like a hateful monster. It's not love, you know, and I think people get this confused. There's like two sides of this spectrum. There's the love covers a multitude of all sin people who think you can be like a crazy sinner, and if I'm just like, I love you, that will make it stop. No, that's not what that means. And then there's also this side of the spectrum that says brotherly love, fraternal correction, blah, 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 whatever. And so I need to do this. And recognizing when it's your job and when it's not your job. And actually, I'll come back to that. But recognizing when it's your job, when it's not your job, and how to do it. You have to do it with charity, as a pure person, with faith, loving, meeting people where they're at. Like, at some point, sometimes, some people really do just need, like, a good punch in the arm. But, like, you have to go through these barriers before you get there. You can't just, like, jump to punching somebody in the mouth if you haven't tried every other intervention before you get to that point. Do you know what I'm saying? If you don't know what I'm saying, let me know and I will dive into that. But I'm trying to be mindful of the time, because if you're on the I to the G, you're probably about to get the boot in about 10 minutes. So if you don't want that to happen, switch over to the YT. They don't kick us off at the 1 hour mark there. Anyway, what did I just say that I was sticking a pin in? It was right here. What pin was right here, you guys? Oh, knowing when to say things and who. Okay, so this is another thing that I see all the time, is people will post videos and they'll be like, I didn't want to say this, or it hurts me to do this, or whatever. And it's usually they're talking about somebody else, and they're saying like they're so wrong for posting this, or like they just post incorrect information, or they whatever. And I've seen some of these videos, and some of them are so hair splitting, it's obnoxious. Like, one was complaining because in the video the post said something, and then in the caption it said something, and they were complaining that they put this information in the caption. Brian is still complaining that I haven't seen the Mario movie. They put this information in the caption, and this person who was like trying to correct this other person was like, they put it in the caption, and so, you know, it's like putting it in some spot where like you'll never see it. It's like, it's in the caption. What do you mean? It's right there and you can see it, you know? Yes, okay, thank you. Mr. LaPoncha said Gabriel Castillo, The Power of the Rosary. That is representing the same old news in a new way. And that book is beautiful, and what I love about it is, like, you know when you do this on the cover of a book and it feels like velvety smooth? It's like that. I love that. If I ever post a book, I want that like creamy velvety feel. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know. It's hair splitting, first of all, and second of all, saying, you know, I didn't want to do this, but fraternal correction. Like, if you're not their priest or their spiritual director or whatever, stop correcting people. It's not your spot at all. And if you notice, most of these people don't have their priests and their spiritual directors and whatever coming out of the woodwork to correct them on the internet, because they keep that in private, because obviously, like, preserve their dignity. If you have an issue with something that somebody is saying, attack the idea, not the person, first of all. And second of all, another thing that I think there's been maybe some progress made, but it was almost like 1 step forward and 2 steps backward, kind of, because for a while there, a lot of people were making this content and they wouldn't message anyone first. And there was a whole like crusade of us saying, message me before you post stuff, because this could have been cleared up without the post, and you just created this like Catholic infight literally for no reason at all. I could have cleared this up with like 1 DM. And so then they started saying, oh, and, you know, before anyone says, why didn't I DM? I did DM them, and, you know, they still disagreed with me, or they didn't like my take, or whatever. And so now I have to post. No, you don't. No, you don't. The wisdom of address this privately and then bring it in front of friends and then bring it to the church. The church is online, but the church isn't online. First of all, if you want to take it to the church, you can figure out who their priest or who their bishop is, and if it's not much of a concern, you can send them an email or give them a call or whatever. And DMing them yourself and then jumping to posting them on the internet isn't charitable. And DMing them yourself and then not getting together with friends, you skip a whole part. So if somebody tries to justify it saying, well, I sent them a message and then they still didn't take it down, like, you're just not the constables of the internet, and you're probably wrong, and they're probably wrong. I don't know, like, there was definitely like a fight at one point where I just won't get into it, but people make bad content and then they get upset when other people point out that they make bad content, and it's like, you all make bad content, you know, and then you all get upset about having it pointed out to you. But anyway, let me make sure I watch my mouth, guys. Red flags all around. If they are problematic and they are frequently at the middle of whatever, and the algorithm is pushing them because they're divisive and contentious and contemptuous and all of this stuff, it's just red. You know, if you're not gonna block them, at the very least unfollow and then click not interested, because holy guacamole, this is not good. And I'll also say this. Somebody reached out in one of my comments on the big long post that I did on this, saying that they disagreed with me. So, because I said that watching it is sinful. I said it's a bigger sin for them, smaller sin for you, but it's still a sin. And they pushed back on that. And I want you to know that the encyclicals have been super duper clear that we are responsible for the things that we watch. And I wonder if I can find a quote on it as I'm talking to you. But yeah, here we go. Oh, no, that's not it. This is Vigilante Kira. Potent, it's ellipsis, this is the middle of the sentence. Potent instrumentalities of publicity, such as the cinema, which might be of great advantage to learning and to education were they properly directed by healthy principles, often unfortunately serve as an incentive to evil passions and are subordinated to sordid gain. Okay, that's just one quote. Vigilante Kira, Miranda Persis, and then there are more still too. They're super old, and they're talking about the cinema mostly, or like the radio and television. But they're talking about these literal interpretation and also spiritual interpretation. Okay, literally these are the things that they're talking about, but spiritually we can extrapolate. What these encyclicals say in their totality is you can't watch stuff like that appeals to your evil passions, and it's like going to the Colosseum. Which saint was it? I don't remember. Some saint said that they knew going to the Colosseum was wrong, but they still got dragged there anyway by their friends or something, and so they like looked at the ground and they were like, I'm not gonna watch, but then they could hear all of the action happening, and so then they looked up and they were like, I can't look away, you know, like it's so enticing. That's exactly it. It's exactly it. It's wrong to watch this stuff. It's bad, but it's like a car crash, and so you don't want to look away. And it's not edifying. It doesn't uplift you. It's not good for your soul. It's bad for you. And it incentivizes you to send it to somebody else and to go, oh, did you see? Oh my gosh. What's the tea, sis? Like, that's not good for you. If it's not oriented toward going, how do I figure out what is going on so that I can like help people in this situation or something like that, if it's just oriented toward, I want to know the hot gossip, or I want to see the clapback, or whatever, it's appealing to your lower passions. And these encyclicals are super clear that things that we put out ought to be true, good, and beautiful. And things that we consume ought to be true, good, and beautiful. And if we consistently fill our minds with things that are ugly and false and debasing and what have you, you're steeping your brain in that garbage. And so you are molding your brain toward that. Like, this is why the church says things like, don't look into, or not even don't look into, but like, don't spend excessive amounts of time looking into things like demonology. It's because, at a certain point it stops being I'm learning and starts being this is kind of alluring, and I'm kind of like into it, and I'm kind of interested in it, and it kind of shapes me. Like, if you've ever been big into swearing and then you try to stop swearing but all your friends swear nonstop, that is exactly what I'm talking about. It's so much harder to stop swearing when you're surrounded by people who constantly do it. It's so much harder to lead a holier life if you're constantly surrounding yourself with disgusting, gross, worldly things. Okay. That is basically it, ladies and gentlemen, and I have approximately a minute and a half to get the rest of this out. So, here we go. Please, once again, ladies and gentlemen, consider supporting on Locals, uncatechizedcatholic.locals.com/support, because Brian deserves a living wage. Thank you again to Gloria Patri Coffee for being a supporter of the podcast. Get 10% off your order with code uncatechized at checkout at gloriapatri.com. Brian says, yeah, he does. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I love you so much, and I'm considering coming back next week talking about gender roles, but, you know, we'll see how far I get through this and some theology of the body stuff. Anyway, I love you. Goodbye.